Resilient You with Alicia Pozsony, resilience expert, mental health advocate, and behavior specialist, aiming to help people to live more fulfilled lives. Have you been through challenges? Have you come out on top of a situation that you knew you just had to get out of? Or maybe you were in a situation and needed help. Maybe you didn't know that you could ask for help. Maybe you didn't accept help. Join us as we meet with special guests who will help us to become more emotionally strong. I would love to welcome you to my show today, Resilient You, available on Power 98.5 FM satellite radio. I am Alicia Pozsony, expert in resilience and behavior, and I love to help others by utilizing the science of behavior to help more fulfilling lives. We are all on our own journey, and each week we will meet with special guests who will help give us inspiration and stories through their own resilience. Today we have our special guest, Joanie Sanches. Joanie's going to help us understand how to overcome failure and be triumphant over the adversities in our life. Joanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Alicia.
Thank you. And I know our listeners will be so excited to hear what you have to offer. As I mentioned, we know that failure and success is something that, we've all been through, no matter what stage or role we play in our lives. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, I am a native of Northern California, and I live here with my husband of 17 years of marriage, 20 years of knowing each other. We blended our family of 4 back then. We each have 2 biological children, and they are now thriving adults, and we're so proud of them. And recently, in 2017, I published a book that I wrote. It's a novel called A Brush with Truth. So I also now am an aspiring novelist.
Wonderful. So that, in you talked about blending your family, and is that the theme of the topic of failure that we'll discuss today?
No, I wasn't going to go in that direction, but I can touch on the fact that when you're blending children into a new family, they want it another way, and they resist any kind of new people coming into their life. And I really believe that's rightly so. They don't want someone new. They want it the way it was. And it's a very long journey, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it isn't. And we did seek counseling. We both were divorced and had our own issues that we were dealing with while we were trying to, help our children assimilate into this new world. So it was a feat of resilience. And the fact that we've all come out of it alive is, to me, amazing. And so that was a feat of resilience ultimately. And it just takes a lot of sticking with something and just taking one obstacle at a time. And I think what I will tell the people today of how I overcame adversity, it came to me one day in the shower where the warm water was flowing over me. And believe me, Alicia, the shower was my sanctuary. It was a place I would not be interrupted. And it was where I processed through a ton of my grief and feelings. And this one day, I was so exhausted, I just started crying in the water, right? Because water has that effect of sometimes bringing up emotion. And when I was all done crying, when I had no more tears, a moment of clarity happened. In that moment, some greater voice told me to just put one foot in front of the other. That's all I had to do. And that's very cliche if you just say it, but the way it came to me, it came in a very compassionate way. And it truly helped me remove overwhelm as my default and come into a place of more presence where I could really take one thing at a time and triage, if you will, all of the things coming at me and be able to just finish something and then address something else. Because when you're in life, sometimes it really brings too much, and then you have to kind of slow it down. And that was a moment of grace, I think, where something came to me that really put me on another path of knowing that our thoughts and words have great power for change.
Yeah, so that's, that is just kind of the essence, I think, of resilience. You mentioned when your family life is changing, you're going through that, um, and for some, it may be even traumatic. Youth process things differently, and individuals, we all process things differently. So to not give up during that those tough feelings, that's so true. By removing the overwhelming feeling that you have, processing one thing at a time brought you to that moment of grace. And again, I know you can have that in a day-to-day scenario. If you're going to work and you're overwhelmed, maybe it's not the right fit. Maybe it's in your home life, to process it. How many times have we taken time to ourselves, whether we realize that we're locking ourselves in the bathroom, like in the shower, or just to get 5 minutes of peace. So that's definitely key in being resilient. And thank you so much for sharing these personal stories. I know that others are going to get such great inspiration from your life and your experiences.
Well, I do think that from the beginning of time, stories are how we did relate to each other and teach wisdoms and bring forth from our own experiences solutions that might work for certain people. Of course, it won't work for everyone. Everyone is different, and everyone has a different set of circumstances. But I think the show and what you're holding a space for and bringing in different people's stories is definitely going to make a difference. And I'm so honored to be part of this because I think it's really helpful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yes. And that's the goal here. That's the goal. So many people operate from a place of fear, and, it prevents them from doing things that could make them great, either in relationships with others or, even in their own success in life. Joanie, how about you? Do you have any situations where you were fearful, maybe, how you came out of that fear?
Alicia, I think I was born afraid. I think I have a real hypersensitivity kind of built into me to be kind of anxious. And when I was 4 years old, my mother decided I needed to be socialized because my sibling that was directly older than me was 5 years older than me. And there was no children my age on the block. So she decided she was going to put me in the preschool around the corner. And it was like halfway around the block. And so she drove me over there one morning and dressed me all up. And we walked in. And the first thing I noticed was chaos and like an oversensory overload in myself. And I looked around and there was kids being kids, playing in sandboxes, screaming, trying to get the swing. And then these teachers running around trying to make sure everybody's okay. And so my mother drove back home, and my first opportunity, when I saw that everybody was occupied, I walked out and I walked back home. And I said, I'm not doing this. Of course, my mother was a good mother and she wasn't going to allow that to happen. So she finally drove me to like a high security daycare where I couldn't leave. And I became more socialized. But my instinct is to be in fear, and I'll be honest about that. And so let's go now to high school. I was a good student, and I was a 4.0, and I had been offered a scholarship to San Diego State, and I even went down there to look at the college. And again, the moment I stood there, it was so large compared to my small town high school. And my body just went into this panic mode of I can't breathe, and all these what if thoughts started streaming in. So fast forward a little bit, and I'm giving this bogus speech to my fellow students to embrace challenge and be bold. And all the while, my inner voice and my fear voice is saying, oh no, we're not doing this. You're not going to college. And I actually did not accept that scholarship. I will never know the outcome because I didn't try. And I have to say that again. I will never know the outcome because I didn't try. I let fear drive, and I was my own obstacle, not the big giant school, nothing else. And that's something that I think of often. If you want to call it a regret, you can, but my life has brought me to a now moment that's where I'm very grounded and happy. So it's difficult for me to have regrets. But if I was to say that was a big decision that I could have made differently, and if I had had resilience, and if I had the ability at that time to see the possibilities rather than all the negativities, I might have made a different choice. And I think if there's any young students who are teenagers or ready to go to college and they're afraid like I was, because not everybody's gung-ho for a new adventure. If you have the grades and you have the ability, ask for help to get through that fear, because I think actualizing is super important, and one of the ways is to, further education.
Yeah. And, how many of us have situations we can recall that we have been fearful? When I was in high school, well, my upbringing is a bit dysfunctional and different. So I didn't have support or structure. So all through high school, my mother, who was mentally ill, told me, "Oh, you're doing fine. It's okay. You can get C's or D's. It doesn't matter." Well, so by the time I was in, my junior year, I, was meeting with guidance and what's your path? What do you want to do with your life? And this question was so big. And the same thing, the anxiety took over, the fear. I didn't want any part of it. Well, I actually went and took my GED before graduation. I didn't want to finish school and go through that painstaking process of fear of knowing, will I fail in college? So I went to work, and I was not brave enough to ask for help. My life, it's taken its path, and I put my book out there. It's a self-help workbook, Joni. I know you've used it, you've seen it. Emotional Strength Explained. And in that book, it helps people to get to the path that they need. And just a couple weeks ago, I met with students at a college, the state college here in New Jersey. And these students were so happy to see this book as a place to put down their feelings, to come to that place of bravery in their own situation. This was the end of the year. They were taking finals. Summer was coming. They, some of them were almost to their senior year, right? So they have life in front of them, internships and everything. And, they were so happy to be able to get to that place of bravery where they can ask for help in this book. So again, you had success. And Joni, for a moment, I would like to go reference your book. A Brush with Truth is a novel. It's out available on Amazon. Your main character, Jasmine Rose, keeps secrets, and she's not real or brave enough, I think, right? Is that true? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That's the absolute truth. When we lack the ability to be ourselves because of fear of failure, fear of exposure, anxiety, which I would say my character does have, you do keep secrets. You don't want to be revealed because it's too painful and it's too scary. And yes, Jasmine Rose is a painter, but she's in the closet with it. She's afraid of bringing it out because she loves it so much. And she's so fragile that if people criticized her art, what would she then have? She would have nothing. So she's very attached to this. She's overinflamed things because secrets have a way of growing into big monsters. And so, yes, that was kind of the beginning of the book. But, people that are, that struggle and go through really hard times, if they come out of it and they heal through it and they learn through it, they can become people that really are authentic and are kind of guiding lights for other people. So I think it's important that people don't keep secret their issues. I think it's good to start bringing them forward and out because, and of course, in a safe place. And that's where she kind of has a process of coming through fear and in a very interesting kind of roller coaster way. But it's the human story, right? We're not born perfect. We're born to go through this adventure and find out where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are, and face them and overcome them if we can.
Yeah. And as you know, that reminds me, being a parent, right? When our kids are young, they're toddlers, we want to, do things for them to protect them, to keep them safe. And when it's time to let them do things on their own, it's a little, nerve-wracking for us as parents, but for them, the more they learn and they're able to do on their own, the stronger they become, the smarter they become. And I think it's the same for us as adults. If we could remember not to let that emotional response take over, we can really, come out healed, as you say, go through things and find out where where we fit best, right? So it's definitely a process to navigate our life the way we want to see ourselves, right? And the way we want to come out of it. I mean, recently we had the COVID pandemic, and I mean, that put a spin on everybody. Some people who were at home, were uncomfortable because they were social beings and they wanted to get out. So they were out of their comfort zone. Um, and then you had other people who were, happy to be at home because they were not social. And um, how about any, recent challenges, Joanie, due to that COVID pandemic? Did you have anything that you experienced?
I did. I worked in corporate America for medical device. So, and I was a medical assistant for a while. And I got all this without my college education. But I will say that I did take the vaccine and I got super reactive to it. So after I took my vaccine, I got all the symptoms. I got fever, headache, chills, and let me give you a little backstory about that as well. I come from a family of origin where my parents lost their first child at, I think he was 3 or 4, to tuberculosis, which is a communicable disease as well. I was raised in a family where during a time where they didn't have resources for people to grieve that kind of loss. And I think I've read that parents losing children is the greatest stress and the greatest loss that you can undergo. And so my parents were very wounded, very grief-stricken, and they had more kids. But every time we would get sick, we wouldn't only suffer the disease, we'd suffer the fear that we felt from them, because they would automatically go into that trauma response if we got sick, and then we kind of absorbed it. And so when I get sick, I also feel afraid. So it's something I've been working on, but it goes back to the beginning of my life. It's very hard to unravel that one. So anyway, so here I am. I've taken this vaccine, and I'm scared of the pandemic. I'm scared of COVID. I don't want to get sick. So here I am having all these symptoms, and I'm just laying in the dark, kind of in a state of suffering and fear. Comes time to get my booster, and I'm old enough, I need a booster. I said, I'm not going through that again. I'm either not going to get it, or I'm going to have to make a plan. So I went on YouTube, and I found all these guided meditations, and you know me, Alicia, I'm kind of a spiritual wanderer. And so I found all these really interesting kind of spiritual things to watch, and funny things to watch, like distractions, so that I could distract myself from the overlay of fear while going through the reactions I knew were normal for this kind of thing. And it worked. And so now that I'm older, I can quickly become more resilient and take action when I have fear. Whereas when I was younger, I really didn't have the tools. And I think it's important to know we weren't born resilient necessarily. Maybe some people are, but it's something that we can learn. And, I think that's the greatest gift, that we can learn, that we can learn to be resilient. We can learn to overcome our fears and adversities and turn them into triumphs. And that in itself, that old cliche, nothing succeeds like success, it starts to happen. And it's a good feeling, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's the thing that, in my experience, I am also working with youths for behavior, using the science of behavior and teaching them the tools to be resilient at a young age, right? So these kids need a place to put their feelings and need certain support, especially with, the events that they're having. People often think of trauma as a car accident or, some dismemberment or something extreme. But
Mm-hmm.
really, trauma, as you say, when you were 4 years old and you went to the daycare and it was total chaos, that could have been traumatic for you. And so, one of the things that, as you mentioned, we can learn these tools. And if we can overcome our fears, that will enable us to move towards success. That's amazing, Joni. Thank you so much for sharing this and helping to put this idea out there into the world.
Well, it's so important. If I had had something like what you're talking about, your booklet, some support to motivate me to go to college when I was, young and afraid and timid, I would have had a choice. Fear doesn't really give us a choice when we don't have any tools. So bravo, Alicia, you're doing such good work out there, and that book is so helpful. It gives, when you're in overwhelm, you can't really organize your mind. Your mind is in chaos. So having something to go to like that kind of organizes it for you, and then you can start breaking things down into smaller pieces where they're manageable, is absolutely a gift.
Yeah, that's right. Micro steps, as we call them. If you have, fear of not being able to do something, you got to break it down and, into manageable chunks. And it's not something everybody is aware of. Um, the book that I put out in December, it's a workbook. It's a self-help new way of responding to emotional life. And it really walks each person through with prompts every day where they can come to that place in their life that needs help. And some people might realize that, they need support of other people. Others might just realize that they need to change their perspective. And my favorite part of the book is the middle. It's when they're brave enough to face themselves after they've defined health, they've rejected criticism and judgment of others, they've found solutions and found healthy people to support them. The be brave part is when they actually take that step and see the positive change. I've had counselors tell me that, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. Counselors have told me that they need less counseling when they use this method. It's something I've used all my life, unbeknownst to me, really, but now it's out there. Also, I'm working on the next version, which is for kids ages 5 to 7. And then I have another clinical therapist who's partnering with me because she believes in this so much so that we're going to do other versions of the book for people in different stages of life. It's definitely amazing. And I think, if we can get to that point of feeling our feelings on a deeper level, we can not let them, adversely affect our life. And again, we're all, shining and bright lights inside of ourselves, but we don't always see it. So thank you, Joanie. I appreciate it.
Well, I just want to say something to what you said about feeling our feelings, because I think that is such an important statement. I think a lot of people try to push down feelings. It's uncomfortable to feel certain feelings. And the thing is, I believe if you keep avoiding your feelings, you're going to offload your pain out in the world, and it's just going to make everybody's life harder. So feeling a feeling, it's uncomfortable, but it passes. And I think we all kind of have to relax and say it's only a feeling, and we can feel it and try to get through that feeling and then start to look at it. And, the pain doesn't just go on and on. It's a feeling, right? It passes. It's like waves. It just kind of stays there for a time and then it flows, because we don't walk around with the same feeling all the time. And so there's got to be some permission out there that it's okay to have feelings and feel them, because that's the only way we're going to work through them and get to some other side of things. That's what I believe, and that's what's happened for me, I know.
So, Joanie, feeling their feelings is something that is not, typical for people. We don't want to feel it if it's uncomfortable or if it's difficult. I know there's been times in my life when I, feel that feeling. I know it's uncomfortable, and I redirect or detach instead of doing something like you mentioned to get through it. So have you had any moments where you yourself gave up because of that raw, difficult feeling?
I think I've never given up based on a feeling, but I have given up on some things. I'm twice divorced, which makes this marriage that I'm in now all the more wonderful for me. And so I have literally given up. I've given up on marriage. But it went through a system of, feeling was a lot in part and due to that. And sometimes we do need to give up on certain things. And that's why it is good to confront your feelings. They say that people that lose a child usually break up. The parents will usually break up. But in that day and age, I'm now 65 years old, and so you can imagine. And I was the youngest in the family of my family of origin. My parents didn't see divorce as an option; it was a stigma. And so, all those feelings that I had in one of my marriages, especially, I didn't give myself permission to give up. And it took therapy for me to understand that I could have permission to give up on a relationship if it was harming me, if it was unhealthy, if it was, but that was a process, and it took a lot of feelings. Is this feeling just a feeling, or is this a situation that I really do need to give up on and get out of? And there's no success in divorce. I'll just say that right now. It's only failure that you feel. And then you have to work through that, because you've given up your dream of what you thought marriage was. You've let down people. You've let down some part of yourself. You've made a vow. You all these things enter into it. So feeling your feelings won't always lead to not giving up, but it'll help you choose. Without feeling your feelings, you haven't got the choice and the wherewithal to make a good decision. You will just default by emotion because it will be so overwhelming. So that's kind of what I believe about feeling your feelings. And
Yeah, and that thing you're talking about, Joni, that's a boundary. When we're in relationships with others, obviously everybody wants it to work. Um, and sometimes you don't see when you're being mistreated or when you're not getting what you deserve, or, if it's a toxic situation, and then you have others, giving their input, other family or friends, and different expectations. So it's so difficult, I think, for someone to realize what a healthy boundary is. And in that situation, both your parents who lost a child, and then yourself, and then let's be real here for a minute. We're women, so that adds another level of expectation on top of us. So I think the boundary setting is something that everyone could learn from.
yes, absolutely. But when you're married young, I decided not to go to college and take the easy way, and I got a job and I got married. And it wasn't the easy way at all. So I still wasn't mature, so you succumb to things that age would not allow. Now I would never allow the things to happen to me that happened in that relationship. But then I wasn't sure of myself. I was very naive and very inexperienced. And this is why community, and this is why these kinds of stories, and this kind of resources that are available to people are so priceless. If I had had that, and I had somewhere to go to listen to these kinds of shows, I would have gotten some information, and that's exactly what I needed at that time.
Yeah, we live in a great age of technology, and you can go on Facebook and find a support group for any kind of thing you're looking for. So, I've had people, younger people with issues, reach out to me in my group, which I have a group called Women Uplifting Women, and mostly it's just positivity out that we share. But if someone's going through something, we can share it, and guess what? People have found jobs from that group. They have been able to navigate difficult relationships. So it's definitely something that I encourage. Don't give up, and stay true to the course. Like be honest that you yourself are deserving. One of the things that we always do is talk about our dreams, and how if you have something you want to do and it's a dream of yours, how can you turn that into a reality? It might be daunting at first, but Joni, what is your dream that you've turned into a reality?
Well, so many dreams have come to life once I started on the path of believing that thoughts could change my life, and gaining in confidence and gaining in joy, I suppose. And I think personally, I mean, I'm so blessed. I feel like our kids are all grown now, and I don't only love them, I like them, I respect them, I respect their significant others. One of my sons is a diplomat, for God's sake. He's so brave. So I didn't pass on my anxiety to him. He's so brave. So that's just wonderful, right? That's a win. But personally, I've been writing since I was a child, and I've always wanted to write something big, like a novel. And I remember when Nicholas, the diplomat now, was going off to Vermont, clear across the country, to school and to college. And he looked at me with his duffel bag and his smirky little 18-year-old, hubris, and he said, "You need to get a hobby, Mom. I don't want you calling me every day, okay?" And at that moment, I said, "Wow, parenting is a thankless job, huh?" But he's just amazing. Our kids are our teachers, or if we're blessed to have them, let them teach us. That's what I say. So that was brewing in my mind. Yes, he understood that there would be a great void in my life when he left, and that I would try to connect with him, maybe too much, and he wanted to be independent, and that was good for him. And then one night, friends of ours came over, and they were mentors. They had mentorship programs that I even attended one of their mentorship programs that was excellently facilitated. But they would take these groups to Peru and Israel and all over the world, and they were talking about all their exciting adventures, and our house was alight with the fire of their passion, and they were living their passion. And that night when they left, I was so filled up with I felt like there was a sparkler going off inside of me, and I grabbed a steno pad and a red pen, and I wrote the first chapter of A Brush with Truth. And I knew at that moment that I was going to finish that novel. I had tried before in my 30s, and I couldn't get through a novel. I just kind of gave up. But I knew at that moment that I was going to finish this novel, that it was a seed that had been germinating in me for years, and it was ready. It was time to write. And it does take a village to put a book out there, and I'm so glad you were part of that journey with me, Alicia. It has enriched my life to know you. And so that's the greatest thing I did, was write that novel. And that novel, I think the wisdoms that I learned and whatever I can channel in that creative process came through the characters and storyline that illustrate how a story can lead us home. And I think that's kind of the real point in that story. A story can lead us home. And it's just amazing accomplishment for me. It was almost like I didn't go to college, but I was able to do this anyway. So it has meaning for me. And I wrote it with the intent of inspiring others and being a companion book for people that are going through a hard time, and being able to assimilate wisdom through a fiction. And that's kind of my modality.
Yeah, so Joanie, remind our leaders again the name of your book and where they can find it.
Well, the name of my book is A Brush with Truth, and it's available on Amazon. And I'm actually currently writing a sequel right now. So I'm on my second novel. So obviously I'm very passionate about writing novels, and it's great that I've learned this about myself. So
Wonderful, wonderful. So, so you came from an era where, women had a certain role, and you followed that path, and then you had experiences of fear and failure, and you were brave enough to work through that to come out on the other end stronger. You broke the cycle generationally with your children, and that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So again, we're so thankful, Joanie, to have you on the show. we are excited about your sequel. That's definitely exciting. Can't wait to see what happens to Jasmine Rose. And I'd love to have you on the show again when you debut that novel.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Wonderful. So, Joanie, is there anything else that you'd like to share with readers today? I know that we've touched on so many great topics. We've touched on navigating failure, getting to positivity, success. We've talked about so many things, feeling our feelings and dealing with fear so that we're not overwhelmed. Um, is there anything else you want to talk to our listeners about?
Well, I believe that we do need to have a daily wake-up call, so to speak, and a process of entering a new day. And I believe that if we have an open heart, it's the antidote to fixed thinking and fear of failure. And I believe that if we have a curious mind, we're not going to miss the beautiful synchronicities that life is always offering us. Again, I think we can learn from people of all ages and to be open to learning from everyone, because everyone has a light, like you said, and something to offer and a story, and especially our children. I know my children, I've learned so much from them. They've taught me how resilient they are, how strong they are, and they've been through a different life than I grew up in, because they did grow up in homes that weren't nuclear families, and they have super strengths where that just blows my mind, all of them. And so I think the best thing in life is to be curious, because we never are going to know everything. And we can get the most out of life by that one attribute. And I really promote that. I really promote that curiosity is underrated, but it's really super important.
All right, so everyone, Joanie Sanches is our special guest today. She's a novelist who lives in Northern California. She's been through a lot of different things in her life's journey, sharing with you today. She's reminding you to prioritize yourself, have a daily wake up each day to begin anew with an open heart, a curious mind. And we will love to hear Joanie on our show again when she has her debut of her second novel. Thank you all for listening. Today, we've navigated failure. We've talked about having positivity and joy, reaching success despite all of the challenges that you have by facing your fears. Everyone, I implore you to take control of your life through self-improvement. You don't have to just go through it. You can grow through it. Join us next week for the next episode of Resilient You with Alicia Pozsony. We will have special guest Leslie Ferguson, an accomplished educator, editor, and writing coach. As a youth in foster care, she dreamed about becoming a teacher. She has a book called When I Was Her Daughter. It's a raw, honest account of one girl's journey through madness, love, and a broken child welfare system where only the lucky and most resilient survive. See you next time.